It's a wonderful day to blaze some good. A wonderful day to blaze some good. Would you be kind? Please light mine. Thank you for anybody watching this. Thank you for tuning in Greens and Beans. Another night at Christmas. Well, Christmas is over now, but anyway, happy Christmas to anybody watching this. And it's been a little while. I've been a little while doing a little podcast and shit. So I've been mostly focusing on the music one. Or at least I was at some point mostly focused on the music one. I wasn't too productive this month. I caught myself getting when you create, you create with, you have to have certain motivational tools and stuff, and mine. But I decided this month to go with some wax instead as opposed to buy the bag. And I overdid it, and it kind of zombified me for a little while. So there was a few weeks where I was sort of unmotivated to make any content, but I'm definitely back on it now, making the content and shit. So yeah, so end of the year has gone by pretty fucking quick, and this has been a crazy year. This has been the year of the fall of the icons. Fall of the icons. I mean, we've had so many. And over the years, you've had celebrities that have passed, and some have been big and some have been impactful on your life. And in my case, being that I love all kinds of media, and it doesn't matter whether it's black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. And we've lost some big figures this year, you know what I mean? And everything, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, it's been, man, it's been a minefield this year. But the fact that it's Christmas, and even with all the turmoil going on, we can still find a little time to celebrate things. The materialistic part about these holidays, and there's always sort of, could not keep in mind, this is a conspiracy podcast, so I'm not going to go over any Christmas conspiracies, but there are a lot. There are a lot of Christmas conspiracies and shit. So I can definitely go over and make a whole podcast about it, but it's a little morbid right now. But just to briefly touch on it, each of these holidays are pretty much put at a specific point for a specific reason that goes beyond just the just to sort of, materialistic is definitely one of the words to use, but just beyond what we think these holidays mean. There's always a double meaning in everything. Everything is this double meaning. There's always a hidden meaning, and there's always a root to everything. You know what I mean? There's always something comes from something. Obviously, we all come from something, but there's always a beginning that does not. There's always a beginning of something that why this particular event happened, or particular things happen, based off of who controls basically our minds. They can always take the events and twist it into something else. So in other words, what I'm saying is, say Christmas. I guess I'm going into it more than I wanted to, but all right. So Christmas, definitely from what I understand, is a ritual, and how you put more power into this ritual is you have more people into the ritual. Now, under the surface, there's is sort of a diabolical sort of social control aspect to the idea of even just holidays itself, holy days. Now, how do you get people in mass to follow something? You put the religious aspect in there, so that's definitely gonna bring people in. And then on top of the religious aspect, you're gonna, you add the whole thing of toys and for children, and the whole gift giving and hanging out with friends and celebrating and eating good food, and so that's how you sort of. That's why I said there's always a double meaning. So on the surface, we are celebrating and having fun and being jovial, and in some cases exchanging gifts, and in other cases it's just doing sour podcast about crazy bullshit. But either way, we're serving a purpose beyond the purpose that we're initially setting the purpose for, which is whatever the control aspect beyond what we see. So I don't know. I didn't mean to take it there because I wanted to be a little bit more festive, despite what it shows in the fucking the picture, the thumbnail, and the. I just have to be a little bit different, I guess, like an asshole, whatever. But either way, anyway, so with the podcast, so one of the segments that I have on it, and just a refresh or rehash what it's about, is laughing with ghosts. And based off what I was talking about, all the people we lost, we're gonna have a lot of ghosts in a few years to sort of react to, and sort of, and that's the thing. It's people in the public eye, celebrities, people that have some sort of a connection to me in some way, whether it's social values that we share or just life values or anything, something, whatever it is that this sort of, in this case, comedians, whatever it is that connected me to them, and what drew me in is just basically what the whole idea of laughing with ghosts is to react to that person. And the only reason why I call it ghosts is because people have passed on, and in a lot of cases, a lot of stuff that they have talked about in the time they were with us was really prophetic. In the case of like Patrice O'Neal, I'm not gonna react to him tonight, but there's many older episodes where I did react to him, and I'll probably do some more in the future. But a lot of the stuff that he talked about in his comedy show and in his numerous times that he was on Opie and Anthony, a lot of this stuff now is that it was talking about back then. This is years ago. I'm talking early 2000s. All that stuff is coming to fruition. It's, especially with the censorship and interactions between men and women and things like that. A lot of the things that he talked about have come in, we're dealing with now. Especially here, being on YouTube, X, Kick, and Twitch. One false move and you're done. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm not monetized on anything, so if they, kill all, my stuff, I'd be affected in the sense that I can't create and he's creating this forum and hope to monetize, so that would sort of kill that. But for a lot of people whose lives depends on it, and you make a good living at this stuff, one false move and just all that's gone. So I mean, just a lot of that stuff. So, but tonight, the ghost we're going to laugh with, and I don't want to put it that way, shouldn't put it that way, but it's going to be John Pinette. Now, I have reacted to him before in previous podcasts, but I'd like to do it again because it's just funny. And it was, now, a lot of the stuff is not necessarily sort of socially valuable now, in the sense that has to do with any sort of conspiracy type stuff or government stuff or religious stuff. But there is a health thing that goes on, and you'll hear it when I play it, and that's sort of, again, something that connects to me because being just let's face it, I'm not the smallest person in the world. I mean, I am fat, but and dealt with a lot of health problems, super health problems. Something that he dealt with, and that's one way that we connect. Plus, also, I remember him from, there's a joke he did a long time ago that I never forgot, not because I heard it from him exactly, but it was something that my mom always flipped out about. And I just remember that because of her. And it was a joke about, because again, he's really large, and he's talking about how he would go to a Japanese all you can eat and just basically sit down, at the bar, not even at the table, and would just eat and eat and eat and eat. And he was talking about how the owner would finally flipped out, and he kicked him out and shit. But he definitely there is some social value in his comedy. Definitely some social value, but it's just, I think that it's from a different perspective than like Patrice O'Neal, stuff like that. Then that's not the only thing. So on top of that, there's something else I want to react to. Both of these is going to be basically audio. I'm not going to do any video. It's no sense. And again, also navigating these YouTube waters. So I hopefully not trying to get a copyright or anything like that, but or I don't know, anything could happen. But by the way, the next one is I'm gonna go with this one first. It's sort of it's one of those like look backs at certain, they have like it's like where they look back at certain time periods, like the 90s, the 70s. Well, this one's going to be the 80s, and there are a lot of things that I'm going to sort of explain as we go through that are really big to who I am. And of course, it's just plain old nostalgia. So that's, it said there's a lot of nostalgia going on there as well. So there's that, and even though I was actually born in 77, so technically 70s baby, but I was 3 in 1980. So I mean, I was alive, but I was like not really experiencing life on a level that I can remember and be nostalgic about. You know what I mean? So, but the 80s, I mean, coming from one of the big events in my life, being that like in 81, I had a little stint in the hospital where, I'm basically, if you think about it, I'm basically like, you ever seen those commercials with the Shriners kids, where Shriners hospitals, where not the ones with the burn victims, but the ones where the children have like deformities and things like that. So I was not in the Shriners hospital, but it was same hospital. I had things go on that I it was funny. I actually remember 4 years old. This is, I guess, it's sort of a traumatic type of a deal that you kind of can remember. But yeah, I was definitely, I was. It was like a Shiner's Hospital type of deal. But yeah, I was one of them. But that was 81. I was 4. And just, I mean, it's not going to touch on everything because, again, me being the type of person I am, being that I consumed all types of media. You know, there was things from, I don't know, put it this way, but kind of have to sort of get the idea of what I'm saying. There was things from sort of the white world and things from the black world, Hispanic, same thing. It was just media from different sources. I never really stuck to just one kind of media. So there are a lot of things in there that pertains to the black side of the 80s that won't be in there. But I'm gonna search one out. If I don't find one, then I might just do like my own sort of comprehensive that I kind of sort of have too, actually, while you think about it. Now that I think about it, you go back onto my my page and you can actually see I did some documentaries about the kind of the music that I actually have 3 of them, and I got one more that I gotta finish. So I kind of actually have, at least as far as the music goes. But I don't know. We'll see. I got so many projects I got like put myself into the mode to do, but I've been sort of going slow, so I don't want to add another fucking thing on my plate. Anyway, so yeah, I want to start with the 80s sort of look back. Again, not the 80s baby, but I did mostly grow up in the 80s. I could also do one for the 90s because the 90s was a motherfucker too. Of course, 1990, I was what? Fucking 13? That was, whew. So yeah, I got to do a deep dive into the 90s too. 90s was all of that. I mean, 80s and 90s, I know the 70s because I don't know like from a personal perspective as far as being there, but I researched things, and so I know there were things going on. Very, very huge events in the 70s, but I personally experienced things in the 80s. So I can say, from especially in hindsight, there was super, 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 super impactful time. It was definitely a turn in the trajectory of the world. Anyway, enough pontificating. Let me go ahead and start the So the first one we're gonna is basically a look back on the 80s. Okay, here we go. Like I said, it's just going to be audio, so we have to like visualize these things.
If you grew up in the 1980s, you know it was a time like no other. From cranking up the volume to your favorite MTV videos, to spending hours at the arcade playing Pac-Man, to rushing out of bed for Saturday morning cartoons, and carefully crafting the perfect mixtape. It was a decade that gave us memories we'll never forget. So let's rewind time and relive those golden days with the things that made childhood awesome. MTV launched in 1981, and just like that, it turned music into a visual experience.
All right. So I gotta stop there. This is one of those this is one of those things that was like monumental for me, especially because music. And we had like when I was coming up, before MTV and all that stuff, we had TV, but it was 13 channels, basically nothing, especially compared to now. And there was like only a couple channels that actually had like television programs. The other ones was like news and when I say television programs, it means like shit like that I would watch at the time, cartoons and sitcoms and comedies and shit like that. But as we'll go over into a little bit more, but MTV was just life changing.
I still remember the first time I saw the video for Sweet Child O' Mine. It felt like the whole world stopped for those few minutes.
Yes, that's it. That's number one reason why I played this. Just what the guy said. That's it. Life changing. Okay. So prior to seeing that video, I had just started getting into rock music, or what I would call metal. It was basically hair metal, and I know, slur, bad word, but that's the best way I can describe it. Being on the outside coming into it, it's a term of endearment, hair metal, but whatever. Anyway, so. And like I just previously mentioned, we only had 13 channels. And then anytime you would change past that, you would have sort of you would get that screen, the white screen, or whatever, sort of I was gray and white screen. But sometimes if you kept going way past the channel 13, you would find these random channels that would display shows or whatever, just whatever would pick up like from random. There was one channel called U68, and they played videos. And me being a little hornball at the time, it was older rock videos, and these videos had the chicks was pretty much barely had any clothes on, and at the time I didn't know who it was. There was one particular band. But I did find out later, basically because of MTV. But I really loved the band, and then I started listening to and paying attention to rock more. And so that time period where the way music was going on, this is me in New York. I listened to mostly hip hop at the time, and then I rebelled from listening to like R&B and all the stuff that my parents listened to. I wasn't with it. Still kind of not to this day, but it was like hip hop, right? And even back then, though, hip hop was sort of a fringe style of music. So you would only get that like 2 times a week, like mad late at night. So I made tapes. It's gonna come up in this. It's gonna come up. That's gonna come up in this show in just a moment. As a matter of fact, so I would make these tapes of the time that they would play those hip hop songs, and I would listen to that all week. But then again, you had your regular radio, which were regular pop songs, which was always good. I would listen to that. But then I started listening to stuff that was rock and roll for, like I mentioned, that one band from U68. And how I found out who the band was basically because of MTV. And the band, it was Def Leppard. The song was Photograph. And then I started listening to it more. Then I got into like White Snake. And that was one of the first rock tapes I ever bought. Tapes again. White Snake. It was the one with Here I Go Again. And I just started listening to different various rock bands and stuff. And then one day, there was another outlet that played videos. And this one came on the mainstream channel, but it was only on Friday. It's Friday night videos. And it's Friday night, late at night. But one day, they happened to be playing it. I think it was like a Friday, and they happened to have like a special episode in the daytime. And that song came on. And I don't know what it was about that song. I don't know what it was about Slash, but the minute I saw that, light clicked in my head. I wanted to play guitar. The minute I saw that, I never wanted to play guitar before. I just started listening to rock music and I was really getting into it, and boom, I saw that. And after, like, literally a year later, I had a guitar. And I've had a guitar ever since. And for like the first 10 years of guitar, that shit never left my side. I'm talking, I'm laying down in my bed, I'm taking a shit. I'm taking a shit playing my guitar with an amp with me. That's how much I was into the guitar. So this literal song, is the main reason why I play guitar to this day. So I know it was a long-winded shit, but you get why. So this is very important song, very important, very, very, very important to me.
Suddenly, your favorite songs weren't just on the radio. They had music videos with iconic visuals that stayed with you long after the song ended. MTV gave us a front row seat to the 80s music scene, with artists like Madonna and Michael Jackson lighting up the screen and shaping pop culture.
And I think they were the two biggest artists from that time period. And that's the other thing too about music from back then. There was such a wide variety of music, and it was like we were finding the music of today basically, and it was just so much and so many different things and coming from different areas and so many different styles. And of course you had people that sounded similar to each other, but it wasn't like, I mean, today honestly there's a lot of overlap. There's I hate to say it, but it's very little creativity as opposed to back in the 80s. That's the best way I put it. And again, we were finding sounds. The old like new wave music, which a lot of that stuff is basically EDM today. Those guys had to build their synthesizers. I got a synthesizer I went and bought at the store, a drum machine that I bought at the store. You know what I'm saying? I got plugins and all this stuff, but these motherfuckers had to make the sound and buy the equipment and have the foresight to see that these are the things they could do to create these sounds. So, it was. I mean, and then with people like, I mean, again, Michael Jackson, Madonna, these icons.
In real time. And we'll get into those legends in a bit. But for now, MTV was the channel that made music a non-stop part of our daily lives. Saturday morning cartoons. Now that was the highlight of the week. Scooby-Doo, Smurfs, He-Man, Transformers, you name it, it was there. The second that NBC or ABC Peacock flashed on screen, you knew it was go time. No DVRs, no streaming. If you missed it, you were out of luck till reruns. And let's be real, we all tried to convince our parents that watching Super Friends counted as educational. Those mornings were pure magic, simple, silly, and so good. Remember when these...
I just used a...
So, like, see, with the whole thing with the cartoons, so on the regular Monday through Friday, there was like a block between 3 and 5 that you would see some cartoons. And of course, me being a kid at the time, I loved it. That's what I lived for. You had, like, I mean, that's the G.I. Joes, the Transformers, Thundercats. I mean, those are like my favorite ones. I mean, they had a bunch of other ones. And then come Saturday, it was kind of a conflict though in my house, because most of the Saturdays I was trying to watch cartoons, but for some reason, my mom was always like, we got to clean. Fuck out of here. I mean, I didn't say that, but I'm saying that in hindsight. But I'm definitely saying, I definitely wasn't saying that at the time, but that was one of the things that really messed me up, is that it was always some kind of issue with fucking cleaning on a Saturday. Now, one thing they didn't mention And I'm not sure if it's just the black side of things, but at 12 o'clock, and I wish I brought up the sound. At 12 o'clock every Saturday, it would switch over from the cartoons, kung fu movies. Every Saturday, that's where I saw all my kung fu movies. Was on TV on a Saturday, but I don't know. I don't know. They had, you can go get their videos, but at the time it was basically music. But every Saturday, and it was crazy too because it was like you had the Shaolin Kung Fu ones like one week, and the next week you had the ones where like the guys was like modern times and they were like mobsters or something like that. So it was I always liked the ones where the Shaolin Kung Fu ones where they had the the kung fu clothes. And but anyway, back to
Round-faced dolls with their adoption papers caused complete chaos. Moms lined up for hours. Kids begged
they're talking about Cabbage Patch Kids
endlessly, all for that magical moment of unboxing. The sweet vinyl smell, the carefully chosen name, and the way everyone swore.
It was a phenomenon. These little ugly ass dolls, they were ugly. I played with G.I. Joe figures, not dolls, figures. But those were some ugly ass dolls.
They were real. The clothes, the accessories, even those questionable yarn hairdos. People adored every little detail. Because in that moment, holding your very own Cabbage Patch Kid, it wasn't just a doll, it was a childhood treasure. When the Nintendo Entertainment System dropped, it was a game changer. Suddenly, your living room...
Okay. Another thing, I'm not like a super gamer, you know what I mean? You got these cats that will grind on the games for hours. I don't have the attention span to literally do that. I really don't. There's some nights where I'll play 4 or 5 hours, but that's like the max. But I literally have been a gamer my whole life. I fucking had, ever since Atari, I've had games. I had
turned into your personal arcade. Kids everywhere were glued to their TVs, blasting through Super Mario Bros., Zelda, and Donkey Kong. The 8-bit graphics might seem basic now, but back then, they were a whole new world. Of course, our parents set a timer to limit how long we could play, but every minute was gold. It gave us some of the best moments in gaming history. And in this video, we'll also take a look at another console that came out a little earlier, one you probably know well. Pac-Man was more than just a game.
Okay. So here's the thing. Pac-Man wasn't a console game. Let's just for a second.
It was an obsession. You couldn't walk into an arcade without hearing that iconic tune. The simple concept of gobbling up dots while avoiding ghosts became a phenomenon. Kids, teens, even adults, all trying to get the highest score and maybe even see that infamous game over screen. The yellow circle.
Okay, so again, with the Pac-Man, again, like I mentioned before, it wasn't on a console. You had to actually go to a store. So I wasn't even, I was 10 in like 1988, I think it was. Yeah. 77, 88, duh. So I wasn't going to the store all the time, and then money wasn't, money was tight. So that was the thing about like the arcade games. I loved arcade games. That was way more than just Pac-Man. They had actual. This is the 80s, so they had way more games than just Pac-Man. And you would just go into a regular corner store, what we call the corner store here. You would go it. And I don't know why I never called them this when I was there. I never heard it called it, but bodega. While I was there, I don't know why, but You just walk into a regular bodega or any kind of corner store, and they have a game in the corner, just like they have like ATMs now, which is ironic because you put money into the games, but you pull money out of ATMs. But anyway, so the thing was, what was so beautiful about the Nintendo, you buy it and you just play as long as you want. The arcade games was a little bit hard because you had to, every time you always had to keep paying, and then it was hard to keep up with that. But that was the beauty of the consoles. You pay one price, and you buy a game, and then you don't have to keep paying every time you play. I mean, of course, we've changed that now, but
Circle with a mouth became a pop culture icon, and Pac-Man wasn't just a game, it was part of everyday life. Who else spent hours in front of that screen chasing the perfect run? For us, Blockbuster was the ultimate movie destination.
Okay, now we're gonna get into Blockbuster. Now that's another thing, because nowadays we got stream. I can go on Disney or Netflix or any one of these streaming services and watch any kind of movie I want. And in a sense, that does the same thing for console. What consoles did for the video games, the streamings and the internet and all that stuff. It's done that for movies. But I don't know. It was just something different about one getting up and going to a movie theater to watch the movie, but then you wait your time for the movie to come, to get out of theaters, and then you go to a store, and it was crazy because the store had a limited amount. So sometimes you go to get a movie and it wasn't there, so you had to wait. So it wasn't convenient like it is now. But it was just something about, and this goes for music and even in the sense arcade. Just something about getting up and going and just being part of life in a sense. And that was one thing about media back in the day. In order to consume the media, you had to actually be part of life. Whereas now, you're sort of like a cocoon, all huddled in your here. In my case, I'm in my garage / office. You know what I mean? And I consume all media. Everything, anything I want. Even porn. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy too, because back in the day, there was a whole bunch of shame with consuming even porn. Of course, this didn't go into it definitely is just for children and shit, so, or more family oriented, so it didn't go into the whole porn phenomenon. But that was the same thing even with that back in the 80s, because this one, I think they're talking more DVDs, but I started off with the VHS. And we in New York, we didn't have, at the time, the chain places weren't a big thing in the early 80s anyway. So you had your mom and pop video stores and shit, and you always had your videos in the back. And sort of I've heard things about it. I've seen some things, and this is as I got older, going into Manhattan, they had some things. It was always seedy. It was very seedy is the best word. They had their their stores, and they had like shit in the back that it was a weird time now thinking back. But I mean, anyway, it's
I've never seen 10,000 tapes in one store.
Every Friday night, we'd head to the bright blue and yellow store, hunting for the perfect VHS tape to rent. And sometimes we'd walk out with more movies than...
Yeah, the VHS was the first before the DVDs, but Blockbuster did come in where we did have VHS, and they switched over to. I mean, it was even a point where you could get both. the same thing with music. You could get tapes and CDs and even records all in the music store. So you had three different ways to consume the media. And the thing with the VHS, it was weird because you watch it, and then it was such an issue about rewinding it. You would even be penalized at the store if you didn't rewind it. Next time you go to buy, or to rent another video, they would charge you extra because they had to rewind the video. So it was it's mad weird shit.
Than we could carry. You could easily spend an hour just browsing the aisles, trying to decide what to watch. Those moments were a big part of the 80s experience, picking out a movie and having a fun night in with friends or family.
See, again, that kind of goes what I'm saying. You had to sort of earn that moment. You know what I mean? You had to physically get up and go to the store and pick up whatever media it is, and then take that media. Because again, you're not watching the movie in your car or in your phone. You know what I'm saying? You're not listening to that record or that CD. Well, I mean, you could listen to the CD and tapes and stuff in the car. That you could do. But as far as like with movies and shit, you had to go and then go home and watch it. So you had to sort of earn those moments. And with everything you did, you had to earn that moment of I don't know what the word I'm looking for. But again, like I said, you had to earn those moments.
Blockbuster wasn't just a video rental store, it was where the weekend began. Michael Jackson and Madonna were the unstoppable duo of the 80s. MJ wasn't just the king of pop, he was the king of cool. His moonwalk on Motown 25 changed everything, and the world could...
And me being like a ultra metal head, I mean, maybe you don't necessarily see it all over all the stuff I do. I'm in like extreme metal. Like, I mean, I'll go as high as like Dimmu Borgir or Behemoth. That's how, and everything in between. You can still go back and listen. Three artists from back in that time: Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Prince. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other ones, but these were like big. And then me being with the music that I listen to, I could still, and I do, go back and listen to these guys' music.
Couldn't get enough of his hits, like Billie Jean and Thriller. Meanwhile, Madonna was the queen of reinvention. With every new song, look, and attitude, she kept us guessing. Whether she was singing Like a Virgin or Material Girl, she was always one step ahead. Together, they dominated the airwaves and set the tone for the decade, leaving an indelible mark on music, style, and pop culture that we still feel today. Before streaming and binge-watching, we had the mighty VCR. Getting your first one felt like unlocking a new level of freedom. You could finally record your favorite shows or rent a movie and pause it. No more waiting for reruns or racing home to catch something live. And let's not forget the classic Be Kind Rewind sticker on every rented VHS tape. Friday nights at home with a stack of tapes from the video store, that was peak comfort in the 80s.
See, that's again like I was mentioning, the whole videotape stuff. It was definitely just a just as it was. I don't know, man. It just feels different. Again, I'm going from hindsight and then knowing how things are now. I love being able to sort of, I get up in the morning times and I pop on my computer, and if I want to go back and listen to something, if I want to just listen to anything pretty much, it's right there. You know what I mean? If I want to watch anything, it's anything. I mean, anything. It wasn't like that. It was so hard to get. It was hard to get the. Just to get the, I'm gonna say media, but just even in the sense with music. I was a fucking kid, and we was broke, single. a latchkey, basically. Anybody that watching this is, of age, they know latchkey. So we didn't have like a whole bunch of money. So whatever we could get of these things, we'd have to, it made it that much more to enjoy it. You know what I mean? You couldn't take it for granted because you didn't always have it. So you really felt that moment or whatever it was, and it's a movie. How impactful in your life, and how it's not going to pay your bills. It's not going to it's not going to comfort you or whatever. Well, I mean, sort of, but and it's not a tangible thing in the sense that. I mean, the media it comes on is tangible, but the movie itself is not something tangible that you can grab at. But the moment, again, like I said, going to the store, picking out the movie, joking and laughing with people around the store, and maybe fighting, whatever it is, And then when you watch the movie, you sort of it felt like you enjoyed it more, especially since you didn't have it the next day. You had to give it back. So
When the Walkman came along, it was like getting your own private concert, anytime, anywhere. Suddenly, you weren't stuck listening to whatever was playing on the radio. You had your own mixtapes, your own music, right in your pocket. Whether you were riding your bike, mowing the lawn, or just trying to tune out your siblings, those foam-covered headphones were your escape. It made music feel personal.
Now, I didn't always have a Walkman. In the 80s, it was an expense that couldn't be afforded. But I mean, I've had the Walkmans through the years. My thing was the CD Walkman. I was a little bit older and I had a little bit more, dough. So, and that I always rocked the CD Walkman. But this is with the predecessor.
In a way nothing else had before. This little cube showed up in the early 80s and instantly became the puzzle everyone had to try. You'd sit for hours twisting and turning, hoping to get all
I fucking hated the Rubik's Cube. That's what they're talking about.
6 sides lined up.
I can do it.
No, you can't. No one can. It's bullshit.
No, I'm pretty sure I can do it.
No, you can't.
Some kids could solve it in under a minute. Those were the legends. The rest of us either faked it by pulling off the stickers or gave up halfway through and used it as a paperweight. It wasn't just a toy, it was a challenge, a trend, and for many of
I never even got one. I tried other people's shit.
us, a test of patience we never quite passed. There was just something special about making a mixtape in the 80s. You'd sit by the radio, finger hovering over the record.
Tapes. That was my shit. That was the first thing. I mean, again, the way we consumed media back then was so different. So we didn't have like mad TVs in the house. Like I got a TV in every room pretty much in this house, and there are a couple of TVs that broke that are sitting here that haven't thrown out yet. So TVs. I'm 2 computers right here right now. I got my phone. You know what I mean? Back then we had none of that. We just had one TV in the house, and I had a little radio in my room, and I could make tapes with it. And like I said earlier, like I was a big hip hop head. And back then, hip hop, it was like I said, Friday, Saturday, like you're looking like 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. So I stay up, pop in my tape, press record, and there was multiple tapes because it would, you do one side, it would pop, and then you'd have to flip it over to the other side. Yeah, 2 sides to a tape. And then all through the week, that's how I'm listening to my music, is in the tape. I didn't have the Walkman, so the only time I was listening to music, I was at home, you know what I mean? But I didn't have TV to watch, so I was always listening to music. And then when I didn't have any more tapes to listen to, then that's where I started. That's how I got into like rock music and stuff. Not only just from the U68, but basically because there wasn't enough hip hop to listen to, and that's how I listened to like what we call now like new wave. But that was my shit. I'm talking. We figured out how to like do mixtapes. We would go through and pop the tabs and shit like that. So you pop the little tab in the tape and you can't record over it again. Or if you get a tape that the tab is popped, you pop a little piece of paper in it, and then it'll record. I mean, I would freaking take a screw and unscrew this sometimes, and when the tape would break, you know what I'm saying? You could tape it together. Yo, tapes was my shit.
Button, waiting for your favorite song to come on, hoping the DJ wouldn't talk over the intro. It was like crafting your own personal soundtrack, with each song perfectly capturing a moment in time. Anyone else still have their old mixtapes stashed away somewhere? Let me know in the comments. Back in the 80s, if you needed to make a call, chances were you were looking for a payphone.
I do have a tape in here somewhere. I do. Somewhere. Payphone.
They were everywhere. On street corners, in gas stations, and outside stores. No texting, no instant messaging. Just a coin and a moment of waiting. Sometimes you'd find yourself digging through your pockets for enough change to make that call. And let's not forget how awkward it was when the person you were calling wasn't there. Still, those payphones were our lifeline, giving us a way to stay in touch when you couldn't be home or didn't have a landline. Wrestling in the 80s was...
It's weird. It almost feels like I get just yesterday finding a payphone. You know what I mean? That's some weird shit.
Pure excitement. And Hulk Hogan was the larger-than-life hero we all...
Okay. I was a kid. I mean, where a lot of things that have come out. I mean, because it's not just. You understand? I was a kid. I fucking loved this shit. Hogan was. I couldn't wait to see that, and it was the same corny ass shit every time. Where he was about to get beat and then he put that fucking finger up and he would, you know what I'm saying, that he gets up and then he was, I mean, yo, they had the cartoons, they had like the fucking dolls, they even had the ice cream, they had the, I mean, and that's the thing that's so disappointing sometimes with life, how things turn out, because, I mean, the circumstances around how he passed, that was definitely something that was, but the things that transpired before that, how you find out, you know, that whole you meet your hero moment. Okay, this wasn't where I met him in person, but you know, he revealed, I guess, what he was and how he was to the world in the later years. And it really, honestly, really wasn't surprising, because I've heard some things in subsequent years after really getting into this where, you know, there was definitely some questionable things he's done in that back then. But I was a kid. I didn't know nothing about that. You know what I mean? Honestly, even to this day, I'm baffled by racism because I just don't get it. You know, and back then, I like I said, I fucking loved, I loved Hulk Hogan. You know what I'm saying? I watched the Dukes of Hazzard. I watched All in the Family. You know what I'm saying? And I got the jokes in there, the racial. I knew the racial racism, but I just didn't understand, you know, the impacts of, you know what I'm saying? And I knew the racial tension in All in the Family, but it wasn't. I don't know. But wrestling back then, I mean, again, because we didn't have a whole lot of different media. You know, you had to watch anyway.
All looked up to. We were obsessed. We'd watch him rip his shirt off, flex those muscles, and all secretly hope we'd grow up to be just as strong.
I don't know about grow up to be anything like him. I never looked at it like that, but yeah, just
Made it feel like good always won in the end, with that signature, what you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?
that.
The WWF was packed with wild characters, flashy outfits, and storylines that had us glued to the screen. But for us kids, Hogan was the man. The Atari 2600 was our first real taste of home game.
Okay. Now we're getting into the genesis of the console, gaming consoles. At least as far as, I understood. We had one. It didn't really work too well, but when we did get it to work, it was sort of like a mixed thing, because on one hand, it ignited my love for games, but it didn't. It didn't make me obsessed with it, but you could see. There was some fun moments with it, but I just couldn't. Again, my attention span wasn't so that I could really sit down and get immersed in it. And then that's after the Atari, which we did have. Then came Nintendo.
Gaming. Sure, the graphics were far from realistic, think simple shapes and pixelated colors, but that didn't matter. It was all about the thrill of playing something new. Games like Space Invaders and Pac-Man pulled us in, and we'd spend hours trying to get that perfect high score. It was a time when video games were an exciting new frontier, and every joystick movement felt like an adventure. For many of us, the Atari 2600 was the start of a lifelong love for gaming. The Smurfs were everywhere in the 80s. These tiny blue creatures lived in mushroom houses and got into all sorts of mischief, led by the wise and caring Papa Smurf. Every Saturday morning, we'd tune in to watch their adventures, hoping they'd outsmart the evil Gargamel and his cat, Azrael. The Smurfs weren't just a cartoon. They were a world of imagination, filled with quirky characters and heartwarming moments. And let's not forget about that theme song. If you were a kid back then, it's likely still playing in your head right now. Polaroid cameras were a game changer in the 80s. Before everyone had...
Now, the thing with the Smurfs, I wasn't a big fan of the Smurfs, but that was one of those cartoons that it'd have to endure until like He-Man would come on or some shit like that. But I was never really a big fan of Smurfs. All right, let's see.
Had a phone with a camera, getting a photo instantly was like magic. You'd snap a picture, shake it for a few seconds, and then watch as the image slowly appeared in front of your eyes. It wasn't just about taking pictures, it was about capturing moments that you could hold in your hand right away. And even though digital photos rule today, there's something
And again, that goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning about sort of having to earn, that moment. It's the same thing with these cameras, because you have to. It was one or two ways. It's one or two things you were doing with it. One, you were just sort of casually taking pictures, and it was crazy because there was two types. You had the Polaroids that wanted you to get the instant picture, and then there were the other ones where you would take pictures and then you'd have to go get them developed. And that was sort of an issue, always having to go get them developed, remember to get them developed. You have the money to get them developed. Finding a place that developed the pictures for you, So that was always a thing, getting the pictures developed. People born closer to these times wouldn't even know the concept of actually having the pictures developed. That's a whole weird concept, thinking about now. But now the other aspect is if you're somebody doing it professional, and in some cases, and in most cases, you're using equipment that, not the instant Polaroid that pops out automatically, you're having to use equipment, and you're not going to have, you're not going to have an immediate sense of how the picture comes out and things like that. So, there was even in a novice, there was sort of an art to it, and it was one of those things where you take the pictures, you set it up, and then you get it developed. Either like if you're a professional, you develop it yourself, or you take it to a developer, and then you see the picture. And then now you have that moment. You've earned that moment. You had to go and actually obtain that moment. You know what I'm saying? Or the remembrance of that moment. In the case of being a picture. I just keep harping on for some reason. It's just that those times, all the things that we take for granted now, you had to work just to even be able to, like, now you have a platform already there, a platform for whatever your outlet is. But back then you had to build it, you had to go to it, you had to create it, you had to network, you had to, in a lot of cases, you had to have balls, and you did. You had to have cojones. You know what I'm saying? Like what goes back with the videos. If you wanted to watch porn, you had to go through the whole embarrassment. If you're going to like a mom and pop, you had to go to the back of the store and everybody saw you, or you had to actually go to a nudie store. So you had to earn that. You just didn't pull up their phone and be, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. You just use that as an example, but
special about those vintage instant prints. If this video reminded you of the good old days, there's plenty more to explore on the channel. Feel free to explore.
Oh yeah. It picked a select certain number of things that it wanted to sort of put forward, but like I said, there's so much more. And I'm gonna look for one. I might do one that sort of goes through sort of events that involve sort of black people as well. And there's other things there are things that are not talked about, socially. Like, I haven't heard anything about Hands Across America. I'm not even going to go into that, but I remember that. You get into, you go and you line up and you hold hands with random people, and not in the plausible way. It's like we held like a line across America where you hold hands. They don't really talk about that too much. I haven't heard anything about that. And I remember that. There was so much coming up. I mean, and then for me, I was in New York, so that was a whole thing in itself. Again, in hindsight, I know, down here in Florida wasn't, as I say, I mean, I think from what I see back then, there was a lot more of a lot less areas that were sort of made into suburb city areas and shit like that. So you had a lot more. And I know for a fact, because I'm outside Tampa. I'm not going to say specifically where, but I remember speaking with a nurse when I went to the doctor's one day, and she lived in this area for all her life. And she would talk about how, certain parts in this area that she used to go riding like 4-wheelers through the woods. And now it's plazas with, stores and grocery stores and restaurants and shit like that. So I know there were parallels in the sense that, there wasn't things that was not as built up as it is today with, Florida and New York. But New York was always a city, so New York City was always that sort of it was a gritty. It was, and I'm sorry to say, if not any other place wasn't, but it was a real gritty, fucking hard place to fucking just, like I said, earning. You had to earn every fucking moment. You know what I mean? So you wanted to go hang out with your friends, you had to go outside. You know what I'm saying? And you had to run the streets, and we had concrete. We didn't have grass, or we had grass, but you had to go to the park, and that's Prospect Park. You know what I mean? That's all the way fucking far from where we were, so it wasn't always there. We had parks that was like concrete. We had fucking handball walls and swings, but not the swings with the fucking rubber seats. We had the swings that had this hard metal fucking seats, and you had the, I don't know why I'm thinking of swings all of a sudden, but I remember, you know what I mean, you'd have to fucking swing yourself on a swing, and you had to learn how to pump it so you would swing. And if you fell off on fucking concrete. You know what I mean? Fucking just that's what I think. That's what I think about with the 80s and the 90s. You had to earn everything you did. You wanted to date a chick, you had to go up to her, and you had to talk to her. You didn't have to pull it up on a fucking app. You know what I mean? And she didn't get to decide that you were your value based off of stats. She decided you had to put in your game, and you got the chick based off of your game, or didn't get her based off your game. You know what I mean? Hell, you wanted to. I mean, you still got to do that. Now I'm thinking smoking herbs and shit. I don't know. I didn't really experience that. It's funny. I started smoking, but I was in Florida. I didn't smoke while I was in New York. And then I had went back to visit a few different times, and that's when I'm going to the bodega and buying bags and shit. I mean, it's totally different now as far as the herbs in New York. New York is legal. There's no you have to have a fucking license and none of that. I went there a couple years ago. It was like last year. I didn't have the money or the time. I was there for personal family business, but I couldn't. I tried to make it to a dispensary, but where we were staying in the hotel we were, dispensary was mad far, but the closest one was mad far, but we kept passing them. I mean, I finally did go. Me and my cousin finally did get to go to one, but I didn't get to get immersed in the. So there was some issues, but either way, that's the good thing about that New York has done now is you can just go to the store right now, a dispensary, pull up, buy any weed you want, and just smoke. It's like, fuck it. I can't wait for we to have that here in Florida. But everything else, man, I mean, clothes. I ordered clothes online. But we had to go to the clothing store. You know what I'm saying? Same thing, groceries. Past few weeks I've ordered groceries. You had to earn everything. The one thing I can say, which is funny now, getting sneakers in the grocery store back then was horrible thing. Horrible. That was the lowest of the low. You get your sneakers from the grocery store. Even the nerds was rocking on you, yo. All the herbs. You was Herb the Herb. I don't know, I was thinking about that the other day. Because you go to Walmart now, you know what I mean? And you get your groceries, go a couple aisles over, and you know what I'm saying? You could buy you some buy you an outfit. Go a couple aisles over, buy you a TV. Go a couple aisles over, buy you some wheels and rims. Hell, you go a couple aisles over, you can buy you a gun. You get you your sneakers, boots. Back then, we had to go. We had to go fucking different stores for every different thing. You know what I mean? And all the chain stuff is. I mean, we stayed away from the chain stuff. I think like when I was that young, one of the main chain places, which doesn't exist in America anymore. I saw it. I believe Australia was Woolworths. That was basically the precursor to Walmart. Wild times. That's right. This time is always a good reflection time. So between the Christmas and New Year's. Anyway, so it's time for this. My last segment. This is the Laughing with Ghost. We'll go over that. I'll expound upon that a little bit more. Let me start it. All right, so to end it off, we'll have a little bit of a laugh. Now, the bit that we're reacting to is going to be from, again, like I mentioned before, it's going to be John Panette, and he makes a bit about one of the most randomest things ever: gluten. Here we go.
A health and fitness place. Yes, and I had a stress test and blood work. And I go to this doctor there, wonderful lady, but my stress test and my blood work are good. And she's shocked. I mean, at least be a little happy. Don't look like horrified that I don't have anything bad. This is how she told me. I guess she bet the over, I don't know. Is this you? These are good. Your blood pressure's 112/70. We'll have that checked. It must be Celsius. Is there Celsius on there? No, there is not. Can we have a little joy and gratitude? Being healthy. The doctor at this health and fitness place told me one thing. She looked at me very seriously, and I'm not getting any younger, and I was nervous for a minute, and she said, "Did you know that you're allergic to wheat?" And I looked at her and said, "But I'm a wheat farmer!" I'm allergic to wheat, and I thought, oh well, I can't harvest wheat anymore. I'm hanging up my sickle. Because don't friends call you in the fall and go, "We're harvesting this weekend, you never miss." I can't. I'm allergic. Then I thought, wait a second, you make flour out of wheat. Perhaps I should inquire further. I said, "What does this whole wheat thing mean to me, pray tell?" She said, "Well, do you eat a lot of gluten?" I don't know what gluten is, but I would say yes.
Again, big guy. Fat.
I'm fairly certain I'm mostly gluten. And she said, "Well, you should avoid anything with gluten in it." I said, okay, thank you, and started to leave the room, and I said, what has gluten in it? You know what has gluten in it? Everything! Every reason to wake up in the morning. I'm looking at this thing of things to avoid, and I said, check again, maybe it's just cancer. How am I gonna live? She told me to go try gluten-free products. Now, I went to a health food store, which was a new experience for me, and now I like shopping at health food stores. And if you want to know where the gluten-free stuff is, look for a gentleman with a gun in his mouth. Because bullets are gluten-free. Have you tried gluten-free food? It needs gluten. I don't know what gluten is, but apparently it's delicious. And you need to put that back in there. I tried the gluten-free pasta. And at this point, I'm thinking, I hope they make a gluten substitute, like a sweetened gluten, or I can't believe it's not gluten. Now, I think we have people here that know pasta. Pasta, you boil. You are my people. Pasta, you boil, boiling water, 10 minutes or less, little olive oil, little salt. Gluten-free pasta, 90 minutes. Enjoy. Abundanza.
He made a face, and he made the gesture of taking like the pasta and putting it on his throat.
Then I tried the gluten-free bread, and it made me long for low-carb bread. I tried to toast it. It broke the toaster. Should have bought the warranty. And it caused a surge. So I shop now at these health food stores on the road, and there's some healthy things that I like. Some people there have boundary issues. They walk up to me and...
All right. That's the little bit I wanted to react to. I love how he came out with the can't believe it's not gluten or sweetened gluten. You know, they had like the butter substitute. I can't believe it's not butter. And what is it? Sweet and low as a sugar substitute, which is yeah, it's, I mean, I'm sort of been wrestling with a lot of what he's talking about. So I got to get this new year coming up, so stress test and all of that heart shit, because I got, you know, yeah, but yeah, I can definitely identify. It's yeah. It's weird, you know. It's a whole different set of circumstances when, you know, you're fat. Yeah. Anyways. Just wanted to like I said, do a little reflecting, nostalgia, and have a quick laugh or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna go back to usual schedule coming up here the next few weeks and shit. I haven't done the podcast in a good little minute. You know what I mean? It's been a while, so definitely glad to be able to come here on Christmas-ish and you know, go over, have a live a little nostalgia. It's like crazy. I've just got some old pictures and shit that I've just been coming across. Found an old picture of my house back in Brooklyn. Not my house, the house I lived in, but just found a picture. Found a picture of like me from back then. So yeah. Anyway, got some content coming up in the next few days. You know, anybody watching this, check the page. Maybe drop a like. Hell, drop a subscribe maybe. You know, if thumbs down, I'll take them too. It's all good either way. So, day is long, sun is hot. Might as well smoke if you got some pot. I'm out.